I want to share a story with you guys. It's a story that stuck with me ever since I heard it. I don't think it's a real story. I think I just saw it on Facebook or something, but it's always hung around in my memory. And I figured today would be a good day to pass it on. So imagine yourself in late August in California. It's sunny out. There's like a buzz in the air as people are getting ready to go back to school or to university for the first time, which was the story for this guy. His name was Mike. And Mike was so pumped because not only was he going to be going to university and starting something new, he was going to be going out of town to study, and it would be his first time moving out. But there was something even more exciting than that to him. His family had a tradition that when each of his siblings went to university, the night before they went, their dad bought them a new car. Mike's dad was a single dad. They had lost their mom when they were young. But he had worked real hard and become a wealthy man. And one of the ways he wanted to show his boys that he loved them was by buying them a new car. And Mike was the youngest of three. He'd seen his older brothers, Clayton and Stephen, grow up, apply to universities, get accepted. And on the night before they went, get given a car. And they'd walk into the garage. Their dad would say, "I have a surprise for you." And there would be a brand new car with a bow on the top. He'd toss him the keys. They'd hug and they'd go off to university. And, his older brother, Clayton, he always talked about how much he loved BMWs. So on the morning that he was going to be going off to school, there was a BMW in the garage. His older brother, Stephen, was a big truck guy. And he goes into the garage in the morning before he goes off to school. And there it is, a big lifted Ford F-350. I know some of you guys will be disappointed it's a Ford, but Stephen wasn't. He was fired up. And then, but Mike wanted to be surprised. He didn't want to know for sure what kind of car he was going to get, and he trusted his dad to pick out one that he would like. So he made a point of never mentioning anything about what kind of car he liked. He thought, I just want to see what he picks out. So it's the night before he's about to go off to school, and he's laying in bed, laying awake, thinking about all the changes that are ahead of him. The new people he's going to meet, the studies he's going to start, the road trip across the country in his new car. And he's just so excited to see what it ends up being. So he eventually gets to sleep. He wakes up in the morning. He goes downstairs. There's already been coffee on, so he knows his dad's awake. He pours himself a cup and heads into the garage to find it completely empty. And he hears footsteps coming down the stairs, and he sees his dad with a big smile on his face. And his dad says, "Son, I have a surprise for you." And Mike realizes, okay, the car's probably parked outside. Wow. I wonder what it's going to be. And his dad hands him a small wrapped package. And Mike opens it up. And he sees a Bible. And he's so confused. Because their family were Christians, sort of. They would go to a Christmas Eve service with extended family, but it wasn't something they talked about. And it certainly wasn't something that was going to replace a car. He looked at it confused and looked back at his dad. And his dad said, "Son, you should read it. Just flip through it real quick. Maybe you'll find something in there that helps you with this next stage of your life." And Mike was so angry and so disappointed. Both of his brothers had got cars. And here on this big morning, he gets surprised with an old book. And his dad doesn't even seem to think that that's a problem. He doesn't even seem to think that that would be a letdown. He's just standing there with a stupid smile on his face saying, "Flip through it, maybe it'll help you." And the anger welled up in Mike. And he said, "There's not a chance this will help me. Why would you do this to me?" And he sees this look of confusion on his dad's face, which makes him even more frustrated. Why would you be confused that I'm disappointed by this? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And just in a moment of disappointment and anger, he throws the book down at the ground. He grabs his bags that he had packed the night before, throws them into his old Tercel, and drives away to university. He was just so frustrated at his dad that he would do that to him and that he wouldn't even think that's a problem. He goes off to school. His dad tries to reach out and ask how he's doing, and he just doesn't want to talk to him. He always had a feeling that, the older brothers got a little bit more than he did. They always did a little bit better in school. They always did a little bit better in sports. And he believed that his dad loved them equally. But then when push came to shove and money had to be spent, money only got spent on the older brothers. Mike felt like there wasn't much left for him. Just an old book, and maybe it'll help you. So he decides not to return his dad's calls. He's working away at his degree. And eventually he gets a phone call. A phone call that he wasn't ready to hear. His dad had passed away. So him and his brothers go back to the house to be there one last time and help pack things up. And on the mantle above the fireplace, Mike sees the book he threw on the floor. And he remembers one of the last things his dad ever said to him was, "Flip through this. Maybe it'll help you with what's next." And he picked it up. He rifled through the pages. And what he saw inside the cover absolutely stopped him in his tracks. It was a note. It said, "Son, I want to pick out the exact car that you want. We're going to head to a dealership today and pick it out. Just let me know where you want to go." See, his dad hadn't just got him a book. He wanted to surprise him with something incredibly personal to him. He had a plan to take care of him. He had a plan to love him. He had a plan to show him that he noticed him, that he cared about him. He had something in mind that was good for him. But Mike was so angry that it wasn't immediate, that it wasn't what he thought it would be, that he completely missed out. Now that story is intense, and I really hope it's not real. I think it's just one of those Facebook things somebody put up. But that story taught me a lot, and that story has stuck with me. And guys, if I'm being honest, I've lived large parts of my life having that same spirit Mike did, where when things don't go my way immediately, I am so angry that I wouldn't even give the people around me a chance to prove that maybe there was something more going on. And I've actually realized that even in my relationship with God, there's times where I've acted like Mike, where I've felt like things were not what I expected. And because of that, I wouldn't even give God a chance. I wouldn't even ask some questions to find out if maybe there was more going on than I thought. Because, the moral of this story wasn't that, just a Bible should have been enough for Mike, that he should have been like, "Oh, great, my brother's got a car, I got a Bible, this is enough, I'm happy." The takeaway from this story was that if he had just paused and asked a few questions, if he had just paused and believed that even though it didn't feel like it in that moment, his dad might have had something good for him, things would have been different. And there's been times in my life where I was unwilling to pause and see if maybe God had something bigger for me than I realized, because it didn't feel like it in that moment. So our first reflection question, if you have a journal or a piece of paper and a pen, feel free to grab that now. Can you think of a time that you ignored something good because you were too focused on something you didn't have? Take some time and reflect on that answer. There's a book of the Bible called Philippians that has some great advice for how to live as a community and also as a person who follows Jesus. And I've turned to that book time and time again when I've kind of felt at a loss of what to do. And time again, I found a few words that have comforted me and given me some next steps. And I want to read some of those words to you from the Message translation from Philippians 4. And this is what it says. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. One of the things I love about this encouragement is it acknowledges that there will be things we need God's help with, but it encourages us to give thanks first. And this phrase in the message says, let your praises shape your worries into prayers. It gives us this idea that, yeah, there will be things that we need, but when we start by acknowledging and giving thanks for the things we have, it sets our heart right so we know what we need. When we focus just on what we want and just on what we feel like we need, we might actually twist our heart to a spot where we are unaware of what we actually need. We get so focused on what's immediate, on what we want right now, that we miss out on what we already have. And this is a beautiful encouragement to start with awareness of what we have, thanking God for it, and then to trust Him for the things that we need, because there will be things that we need. Another thing that these words in Philippians remind me of is that we can have wholeness before there's change. We've talked about this before at Youth. Our God can change circumstances, and He can also change us in our circumstances. And this passage in Philippians reminds us of that. It says, where you are, the way things are today, God can settle you down and bring you wholeness. Why is that? Because I believe He opens our eyes to the way things actually are. That when we start with thankfulness and we add trust for the things we need, He then opens our eyes and sets our hearts straight to what is real. But when we focus on what is immediate and what we want, we get so twisted into needing it that we seek out trying to gain it for ourselves as if that will bring us peace. And what God tells us is that Him opening our eyes to what is already true, to what is already good, will bring us peace. When I reflect on the past few months and think of things to be thankful for, I actually realize I have quite a bit. Some quality time with a few close friends. I've had to make more hard decisions than ever before, and I think that's actually made me a better listener. It's made me a deeper thinker. But my favorite thing that I've come to realize that is so good about the past few months is that I've had to ask for help a lot. And I don't like doing that. I love to be able to fix things myself, to get things done on my own. And that has just not been possible for me. With the amount of changes going on, to do things well actually has required teamwork. There's been no other way. And there's been a lot of times where I just don't know answers. And I've had to come to people in my life and say, I need your wisdom because I don't know what to do. Can you please help me? Or I really need some help with this project because I can't do it by myself. Do you have time to help me? Or I don't have skill in this area, but I really want to see this happen. Can you help me? And the beautiful thing, guys, is twofold. One, yeah, it's humbling, and there's a humility side of it where I become more aware of, how much I need other people and how I'm only really a small part of God's plan in this community. So there's a humility that's good, but there's another thing that I think is even more beautiful, which is it allows me to see what other people have to offer. Because as I've counted on people, they've delivered. As I've asked for help, people have been so helpful, people have been so kind, and it's allowed me to understand and appreciate their giftings in whole new ways. It's given me brand new things to celebrate about people that I've known for years, as I realize how skilled and capable and gracious and kind and patient they are. And I think this is a lesson I'm going to take with me the rest of my life, that when I ask for help, I actually experience community in a deeper way. I've lost a lot this year. We all have. And one of the losses that grieves me the deepest is the loss of community the way I used to focus on it. And I've been really disappointed about that I can't just gather people together the way I used to, because that's how I saw community. And while that was good, and that it's true that community can exist in that way, is it possible that in the same way as Mike from the story, I've been so angry at losing community my way that it's possible for me to miss out on a different expression of community God prepared for me, that he prepared for us because he loves us, that he actually never forgot or didn't have a plan or abandoned, but rather he had something really good for those who are willing to pause and say, God, what are you up to here? I believe you're up to something good because you always are. I believe you're doing good things because you always are. And if I don't see it, I want you to open my eyes. And when I've prayed that prayer in this season, my eyes have been open to a whole new experience of community. Because when it's not easy or as fun to get together, propping open a computer screen and looking at a Zoom call is never as fun as having coffee and wrestling with your buddies. But you realize that there's something about community that you want to fight for. And you realize that even when it's inconvenient, you care about it. You realize that there are people in this community who you will persevere to be close with. And we get a whole new, deeper, beautiful understanding of community. Now, does that mean that the pain of loss and change doesn't matter? No, of course not. That pain is real and that pain is valid. And we're hoping that a lot of these things actually change. But I don't want to be so focused on what's not my way that I miss out on something else God has for us. So our second reflection question is this: what are 3 things that you're thankful for over the past few months? What are a few things that are just good that you're glad you have? So Bravo Youth, I think we have a choice when we lose something. We can decide to try to fill that void and make it right ourselves by just getting things back to normal. Or, when I get this, when I achieve this, I'll be happy. When I get this, when this person, finally says this to me, when this person apologizes, then I'll feel peace. When people actually realize how, what's really true, then I'll be able to be happy. When I get this, when I get this, when I get this, I'll fill the void and be happy. Or we can start with thankfulness, trust God for what we need, and ask him and believe that there is actually something good going on. And I believe the promise that we read in Philippians, that as we do that, he will bring us wholeness. That wholeness comes from him opening our eyes to what is already true. I don't believe that there has ever been a time in my life where God didn't have more going on than I know about. And I've come to understand that if it feels like someone's missing what's going on around me, it's me, not God. And that thankfulness is usually a step in opening my eyes to what is real. So our final reflection question before we move into discussion has 2 parts. First, think of a time where it felt like God had let you down. Think of a time where you felt so confused or disappointed, and you had those thoughts like, God, why would you let this happen? Think of a time like that and write it down. And lastly, spend some time in prayer. Acknowledge to God that thing you just wrote down, that time where you felt disappointed or let down, and pray and ask God, where were you when this happened? Ask him to speak to you. Ask him to bring an answer to your mind. God, where were you when this happened? Because I believe there's always more going on than we know about. And that when we believe that God really does have something good for us, even when we don't see it, there's a wholeness and a peace that allows us to see clearly.